Have you ever heard the story of a king whose wisdom was legendary, but whose immense harem of 1,000 women turned out to be his greatest downfall? This is the fascinating and complex story of Solomon, the king who is remembered as the wisest, richest, and most powerful in biblical history. He is celebrated for having led Israel to a level of greatness and prosperity like never before. But his life was marked by one crucial weakness: his unbridled desire for women. This intense and uncontrolled desire ended up overshadowing his judgment, and despite possessing all the qualities necessary to be the best king Israel had ever known, Solomon ended up becoming one of the worst. God gave Solomon such an extraordinary gift of wisdom that he was able to transform Israel into an immense and powerful kingdom, full of riches and with vast trade connections with distant and exotic lands. His dominion over the land was widely celebrated, and his ability to resolve disputes and problems was admired throughout the ancient world. However, Solomon's harem was not only large, but also a reflection of the complexity of his reign. Consisting of 700 wives and 300 concubines, each of these women came from a different place in the world known at the time. Among them were princesses from Egypt with enigmatic looks, ladies from Moab, women from Ammon, Edom, and many other regions. Each one brought with her not only a piece of her homeland, but also her own stories and dreams. Together, they formed an extraordinary and diverse court around Solomon, transforming the palace into a vibrant mosaic of cultures, traditions, and influences. Solomon's harem ended up becoming a labyrinth of political intrigue and fragile alliances. Each marriage was not just a personal union, but a strategic pact that helped ensure the peace and stability of the kingdom. Each woman contributed something unique to the kingdom, creating a palace that became a vibrant tapestry of interwoven cultures. However, these alliances also had a dangerous and complex side, as they brought with them the gods and religious practices of the women's countries of origin. These elements challenged Israel's pure and traditional faith, and the harem of 1,000 women ended up becoming a crucial factor in Solomon's downfall. In this video, we will explore the intricate and fascinating story of Solomon, from his remarkable legacy of wisdom to the tragic fall that followed. Join us as we investigate whether Solomon really possessed the power to control the demons he faced. What were the consequences of his death for the kingdom of Israel? To make sure you don't miss any of the interesting and enriching Bible stories we have to offer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll begin our journey in the ancient and majestic city of Jerusalem in the year 990 BC, when a new prince was born, who would become Solomon. His name means peaceful and friend of God. Solomon was the fruit of the relationship between Bathsheba and King David, the valiant shepherd who defeated the giant Goliath, a hero widely known in history. However, Solomon's life began with a dark secret: the adulterous relationship between David and Bathsheba. At the time, Bathsheba was married to Uriah, a brave and loyal soldier in David's army. To hide his sin and avoid the scandal that could destroy his reputation, King David made a drastic and morally questionable decision. He sent Uriah to the front line of battle, instructing the soldiers to leave him unprotected and vulnerable on the field of war. As expected, Uriah ended up dying in battle. However, David's actions did not go unnoticed in God's eyes. The death of David and Bathsheba's first son was seen as divine punishment for their adultery. The situation generated sadness and regret, but in the midst of adversity, God showed his mercy. He forgave David, and from this reconciliation, Solomon was born, a peace offering that symbolized the reconciliation between heaven and earth. The young prince grew up under the guidance of the prophet Nathan, a man of great wisdom and mystery. While King David was busy with the complexities of the kingdom and matters of governance, Nathan took on the role of mentor and guide for Solomon. He shaped the young prince's mind and spirit with profound teachings and divine revelations. Nathan, with his penetrating vision and calm, authoritative voice, perceived in Solomon a destiny of greatness and the promise of a bright future. The prophet identified that Solomon had a unique ability to lead and govern, and believed that he was destined for a role of great importance in Israel's history. Knowing that Solomon was not David's eldest son and that there were other older brothers who could claim the throne, Nathan was also aware of the complex and dark story of the adultery between David and Bathsheba. With cunning and determination, he decided to use this knowledge to his advantage, to ensure that Solomon was recognized as the rightful heir. In private conversations with King David, Nathan began to plant the idea that Solomon was God's chosen one to succeed him on the throne. With carefully chosen words and prophetic visions that seemed to come directly from God, Nathan managed to convince David that the choice of Solomon was indeed God's will. Gradually, David came to see in his youngest son the promise of a glorious future full of potential. When David fell ill and was nearing the end of his life, he reaffirmed his decision and named Solomon as his legitimate successor. However, the young Solomon, only 15 years old, was aware that his reign began under the shadow of possible threats. His father's warnings about the dangers and challenges he might face resounded in his mind. With a determination and courage that seemed to surpass his age, Solomon began a rigorous purge to consolidate his power and secure his position on the throne. Joab, the general who had supported Adonijah's candidacy, was one of the first victims of this ruthless purge. Solomon, with his policy of severe justice, made it clear that no one was safe from his decision. He then also eliminated Adonijah, cutting off any possibility of conspiracy against him. The purge was a clear demonstration of Solomon's power and determination to secure his rule and eliminate any threat to his authority. But Solomon didn't stop there. With a strategic vision that seemed impressive for someone of his age, he devoted himself intensely to further strengthening his kingdom and consolidating his authority. He initiated grandiose projects, built impressive structures, and established political and commercial alliances with other nations. Solomon's time was marked by a period of peace and prosperity, but also by growing political and social complexity. Solomon's reign was characterized by great achievements, such as the construction of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, one of the most ambitious and important projects of his era. The temple was not only a religious center, but also a symbol of Solomon's power and grandeur. He made great advances in administration and commerce, and his policies helped stabilize the kingdom and promote prosperity. However, the dark side of his rule also began to show. Solomon's own harem, which initially appeared to be a strategy for securing alliances and peace, ended up becoming a source of complexity and problems. The religious and cultural influences of the women in his harem began to challenge Israel's traditional faith, creating a mixture of practices and beliefs that weakened the kingdom's religious and cultural cohesion. In addition, Solomon's excessive desire for women and the influence of his harem contributed to an atmosphere of intrigue and competition within the court. Political marriages and alliances were often accompanied by rivalries and disputes, which added a layer of complexity and tension to Solomon's rule. Solomon's fall was gradual and complex, reflecting the multifaceted nature of his reign. The influence of his harem and the religious and cultural changes that occurred during his rule played significant roles in disintegrating the stability he had worked to build. The alliances and pacts made during his reign began to crumble, and the unity he had promoted began to fragment. Solomon's death marked the end of an era of greatness and prosperity for Israel, but it was also the beginning of a period of instability and division. The kingdom, which had been unified under Solomon's rule, began to face internal challenges and conflicts after his death. The division of the kingdom and the struggle for power between his successors were reflections of the complex political and social dynamics that marked his reign. Solomon's story is a fascinating example of how even the wisest and most powerful leaders can be affected by their personal weaknesses and challenges. The wisdom granted to him by God was not enough to protect him from the problems that arose from his own decisions and desires. Solomon's legacy is a mixture of greatness and flaws, reflecting the complexity of his life and reign. This video offers an in-depth look at Solomon's life and legacy, exploring the many facets of his story and the lasting impacts of his rule. From the impressive conquests and monumental achievements to the failures and challenges that contributed to his downfall. Solomon's life is a rich and complex narrative that continues to fascinate and inspire to this day. In order to guarantee the military security of his kingdom and strengthen his diplomatic relations, King Solomon made a strategic and significant decision to seal an alliance with the Pharaoh of Egypt. In the context of ancient international politics, establishing alliances with neighboring great powers was crucial for maintaining stability and expanding power. The Pharaoh of Egypt was a figure of great influence and power, and allying with him meant that Solomon could guarantee peace on the borders and open doors to economic and commercial opportunities. To formalize this alliance and solidify the ties between the two countries, Solomon made an important choice by marrying the Pharaoh's daughter. The royal wedding was not just a personal event, but a diplomatic pact with profound implications for the international politics of the time. Solomon's wife, a wealthy and sophisticated Egyptian princess, not only brought invaluable prestige, but also helped create a stronger bond between Israel and Egypt. The union with the princess, who stood out for her garments adorned with fine silks and sparkling jewels, was a success, bringing considerable benefits to Solomon's kingdom. Despite the initial success of the alliance, Solomon made a strategic mistake in believing that marrying influential women from other kingdoms would be the most efficient way to expand his own power and the reach of his kingdom. This error of judgment had consequences that would be revealed later. The idea that such marriages could quickly bring wealth and power to the kingdom would prove to be a fallacy, and Solomon would face the challenges of this decision in his life and reign. One quiet and serene night, while the young King Solomon was resting on his bed, he experienced a profound and significant dream that would change the course of his life. During this dream, a transformative spiritual experience took place. God appeared to Solomon in a state of divine revelation. With a powerful voice full of majesty, God made an offer to the king. He said to Solomon, "Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you." Solomon, aware of the immense responsibility he bore as a ruler and with a truly humble heart, responded thoughtfully and sincerely, "You have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father. He walked before you in truth, justice, and uprightness of heart. Therefore, give me a wise and understanding heart, so that I can govern your people with discernment, to distinguish between good and evil. For who will have the ability to govern this vast and numerous people of yours?" Solomon's request was deeply appreciated by God, who saw the sincerity and purity of the king's heart. The Lord recognized that Solomon wasn't asking for riches, longevity, or the death of his enemies, but rather the ability to rule with wisdom and discernment. God, pleased with Solomon's request and humble attitude, replied, "Since you asked for wisdom and did not ask for a long life, nor riches, nor the death of your enemies, but rather asked for intelligence and discernment to judge correctly, I will grant you exactly what you asked for. I give you an extremely wise and intelligent heart, so much so that there has been no one like you before, nor will there be anyone as wise and understanding as you in the future." Upon waking from his dream, Solomon was now endowed with the most valuable gift a ruler could wish for: divine wisdom, granted directly by God. This heavenly encounter was a crucial milestone in Solomon's life, enabling him to lead his people with a unique combination of justice, passion, and deep understanding. Solomon's wisdom soon became famous and revered throughout the known world. People from all nations began to seek out Solomon's presence, to listen to his advice and learn from his vast knowledge. As the scriptures record, all the kings of the earth sought to see Solomon's face and to hear the wisdom that God had put in his heart. Solomon's wisdom manifested itself in various ways and in different aspects of administration and government, leading his kingdom into an era of prosperity and international respect. Stories of his wisdom spread quickly, cementing Solomon's reputation as an incomparable leader and a just ruler. One notable example of Solomon's wisdom was demonstrated on a particularly memorable occasion when two women presented themselves to the king, both claiming to be the mother of the same baby. The drama unfolded in the throne room, where each of the women, with tears in their eyes and voices charged with emotion, told their version of the story and begged for justice. The baby, the center of the dispute, was in the arms of one of the women, and the atmosphere in the throne room was charged with tension and expectation. Solomon, using the wisdom God had given him, listened carefully to both women. After carefully considering their words and behavior, Solomon made a surprising and shocking proposal to everyone present. "Bring me a sword, cut the baby in half, and give one half to one woman and the other half to the other woman." A deep, crushing silence overtook the room as all those present awaited the women's reaction to this drastic proposal. The baby's real mother, with a torn heart and love visibly evident in her words, pleaded desperately, "Please, sir, give her the baby alive and don't kill it." She was willing to give up her own son to ensure that he remained alive. In contrast, the other woman, who was not the real mother, accepted the idea of sharing the baby, showing a lack of empathy and maternal affection. This behavior revealed the true nature of both women. Solomon then made his final verdict based on the women's reaction. "Give her the baby alive and don't kill it. She is the true mother." Solomon's decision demonstrated the depth of his wisdom, revealing the truth and protecting the life of the innocent baby. The true mother, moved by genuine and unconditional love, preferred to give up her son rather than watch him die, while the impostor showed the absence of true affection. News of this extraordinary judgment spread quickly, and the people of Israel marveled at the divine wisdom manifested in their king. As it is recorded, all Israel heard the judgment that the king had rendered and feared the king, for they saw that divine wisdom was in him to judge. Although his reign was marked by wisdom and prosperity, the people of Israel still clung to ancient traditions and performed sacrifices on high places and makeshift outdoor altars. The temple dedicated to the name of Yahweh had not yet been built, and Solomon knew that the construction of a temple was essential to consolidate the worship of God and create a spiritual and religious center for the kingdom. Solomon therefore decided that he would build Israel's first temple, a monumental project aimed at creating a dignified space for the worship and presence of God. However, at the time, he didn't have the necessary resources and infrastructure to build the grandiose temple he envisioned. To meet this challenge, Solomon began a strategic negotiation with Hiram, the king of Tyre. Tyre was a city-state famous for its building skills and wealth of natural resources, especially high-quality wood and stone, which were essential for building a grand temple. Solomon sent emissaries to Hiram with a bold and strategic proposal for the construction of the temple. He offered an economic and political alliance in exchange for materials and skilled workers. The proposal included exchanging Israel's agricultural products and other goods for cedar wood and other building materials that Hiram could supply. The king of Tyre accepted Solomon's proposal and agreed to supply the materials and labor needed to build the temple. This agreement not only provided the necessary resources for the temple, but also further strengthened relations between Israel and Tyre. The construction of Solomon's temple was a grandiose and challenging undertaking, involving an enormous amount of work and resources. Solomon mobilized workers, craftsmen, and specialists to carry out the construction. The temple was designed to be a majestic and impressive place of worship, reflecting the greatness of God and the prosperity of the kingdom. The construction of the temple also symbolized Solomon's stability and power as king, as well as the central role that God played in Israel's life and identity. Solomon's reign is remembered as an era of wisdom, prosperity, and remarkable achievements. The construction of the temple was a significant milestone, not only in Israel's history, but also in Solomon's personal legacy. Solomon's wisdom and vision ensured that his kingdom was a model of justice, administration, and power. The temple he built was not just a building, but a symbol of the divine presence and unity of the people of Israel. Solomon faced challenges and made difficult choices throughout his reign, but his achievements and legacy transcended time and left a lasting mark on history. His rule is an example of how wisdom and faith can positively influence a nation and shape its destiny for generations to come. Solomon's story continues to be a source of inspiration and reflection on leadership, justice, and the search for truth and understanding. According to the scriptures, the temple built by Solomon for Jehovah was 60 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Every aspect of the temple, from the foundations to the most delicate adornments, was carefully planned and executed. The walls were clad in cedar wood, and all the surfaces were covered in pure gold, creating a sacred space of incomparable splendor. The precision in the execution was so impressive that every element of the temple reflected divine harmony and unparalleled beauty. Solomon completed the construction of the temple by covering the inner walls of the structure with cedar planks and covering the entire interior, from the floor to the ceiling beams. The construction of the temple not only demonstrated Solomon's greatness, but also symbolized God's presence and holiness in Jerusalem. However, Solomon's vision was not limited to building the temple. For 13 years, the king also dedicated himself to building his own palace, a majestic structure that reflected his power, wealth, and status. Solomon's palace was a true architectural masterpiece, with vast rooms, imposing columns, and lush gardens. Every detail of the palace was designed to make a lasting impression and display the king's greatness. All these works were made with precious and expensive stones, cut and set with precision. From the foundations to the finishing touches, every stone was carved and laid with care, from the foundation to the grate. Courtyard. The palace was not only a royal residence, but also a symbol of the splendor and power of the Kingdom of Israel. The construction of the temple and palace significantly transformed the physical landscape of Jerusalem and consolidated the Kingdom of Israel as a major economic power. The fame of Solomon's wisdom and wealth quickly spread throughout the known world. Kings and queens from distant lands were fascinated by the legendary monarch who had transformed Israel into a prosperous and powerful nation. Among the illustrious visitors was the Queen of Sheba. Intrigued by reports of Solomon's wisdom and wealth, the queen decided to undertake a long and challenging journey to meet the king in person. With an impressive entourage and exotic gifts, she arrived in Jerusalem, determined to test the monarch's wisdom. Solomon, with his keen mind and divine knowledge, answered all the queen's questions with impressive clarity and depth. The queen was amazed and recognized that Solomon's wisdom surpassed anything she had imagined. She declared to the king, "It's true what I've heard in my land about your achievements and your wisdom, but I didn't believe it until I came, and my eyes saw that I hadn't even been told the half of it. Your wisdom and prosperity are far greater than the fame I have heard." This statement by the Queen of Sheba not only validated Solomon's fame, but also highlighted the global impact of his wisdom and wealth. In addition to his wisdom and wealth, Solomon also stood out as a writer inspired by God. Through his literary works, he managed to capture divine wisdom in words that would span the centuries. The books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, attributed to Solomon, have become gems of biblical literature, offering practical advice, profound reflections on life, and a celebration of pure love. In Proverbs, Solomon shared precious lessons of wisdom that would guide future generations. He stated that, "The beginning of wisdom is the fear of Jehovah, Fools despise wisdom and instruction. These words continue to be a guide for those who seek to understand the importance of divine wisdom. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon reflected on the transience of life and the importance of seeking God. He concluded that the end of all speech heard is this: fear God and keep his commandments, for that is the whole of man. This book offers a profound insight into the ephemeral nature of life and the need to find a divine purpose. In Song of Songs, Solomon celebrated the beauty of love and the intimacy between a man and a woman. He expressed love in a poetic and vibrant way, saying, "Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death." This book exalts the purity and intensity of true love and the importance of intimate relationships. Solomon's influence, evidenced not only by his physical achievements, but also by his literary contributions, has established a lasting legacy. His writings not only offer profound insights into life and love, but also highlight the importance of following divine wisdom in all areas of life. Solomon's kingdom became a shining example of how wise leadership and justice can transform a nation, making it wealthy and respected globally. The prosperity and respect earned by Solomon and his kingdom transcended generations, and his wisdom continues to inspire and guide people on their personal and spiritual journeys to this day. In addition to his great achievements, Solomon's wisdom also had a profound impact on the administration and governance of the kingdom. Solomon was known for his ability to resolve disputes and ensure justice in an equitable manner. He established an effective administrative system that helped maintain order and promote prosperity in the kingdom. Solomon was also known for his love of building and architecture. The temple and palace he built were not only expressions of his wealth and power, but also represented a commitment to beauty and functionality. The attention to detail and the quality of the materials used in the buildings demonstrated a deep respect for art and engineering. His reign was also marked by a policy of alliances and diplomacy. Solomon sought to establish friendly relations with neighboring countries and distant powers. These alliances helped ensure the security of the kingdom and promote trade and prosperity. Solomon's diplomacy was a fundamental part of the success of his reign and contributed to Israel's stability and influence in the region. The kingdom's economic administration was also remarkable. Solomon implemented policies that promoted economic growth and prosperity. Trade flourished under his rule, and the kingdom's wealth was managed effectively to ensure a high standard of living for its citizens. The prosperous economy was a reflection of Solomon's wisdom and strategic vision. Solomon was also a man of great culture and knowledge. He had a deep interest in various areas of knowledge, including science, philosophy, and the arts. His reign was a period of cultural flourishing, and he encouraged the development of the arts and sciences in the kingdom. This quest for knowledge and excellence contributed to Solomon's reputation as one of the greatest sages in history. Solomon's influence was not limited to his time. His legacy continued to impact subsequent generations and the history of Israel. Solomon's wisdom and justice were widely recognized and admired, and his reign is often cited as an example of ideal leadership. In short, Solomon's story is one of wisdom, power, and prosperity. His reign was marked by great achievements, both in the construction of impressive monuments and in the effective administration of the kingdom. His wisdom and wealth became legends that spanned time and influenced history. Solomon's contribution to literature, architecture, and administration continues to be studied and admired, and his legacy endures as an example of exceptional leadership and vision. Solomon's impact on his time and beyond is a testament to his greatness and his importance in history. His deeds and words continue to inspire and guide those who seek to understand the true essence of wisdom and leadership. Solomon, with his divine wisdom and righteous rule, set a standard for future generations and left an indelible mark on the history of the world. The inscription on your heart, imitating a permanent and profound mark, is a metaphor that echoes the incomparable and unchanging love described in the scriptures. Like King Solomon, known for his wisdom and deep understanding of love and life. The mark of love on your heart reflects a feeling that is as enduring and unshakable as a tattoo engraved on the skin. The love that is inscribed as a mark on your arm is a testimony to an eternal feeling that transcends the ephemeral and reveals itself with the same intensity with which Solomon described the beauty and complexity of human emotions. Solomon, in his Proverbs and Songs, compared love to the strength and inevitability of death, a feeling that persists and often transcends human understanding. He understood that love has the ability to shape lives, create unbreakable bonds, and even alter the course of history. However, Solomon also knew that love is not without its challenges. It is often accompanied by jealousy and possessiveness, described as relentless and comparable to hell in his writings. These jealousies, like those described in Solomon's story, can consume and corrode the heart, obscuring the beauty and purity of love with the flame of insecurity and fear. The embers that feed love are like embers of fire, a fire that burns incessantly and cannot be extinguished. This fire, which Solomon saw as a metaphor for passion and desire, drives love and illuminates our lives with warmth and light, even in the face of storms and challenges. Just as Solomon recognized the need for wisdom to manage and cultivate love, we must also care for and nurture this fire, if not handled. With care and respect, love can easily turn into a destructive flame. The intensity of love, like the heat of embers, can be both constructive and destructive, depending on how it is treated and nurtured. In this way, King Solomon, known for his wisdom and prosperity, established a legacy that transcended future generations. Solomon, whose decisions and actions shaped the fate of his kingdom and the course of history, created a legacy that would be remembered and studied for centuries. His rule was marked by an era of great prosperity and peace, and he stood out not only for his material wealth, but also for his profound wisdom. His legacy, however, was not only a testimony to his success, but also to his failures and mistakes, which served as valuable lessons for the following generations. Solomon is remembered for having built an empire that was a symbol of wealth and power. His kingdom was an example of how wisdom and prosperity can transform a nation and bring peace and stability. However, even with all his knowledge and success, Solomon made significant mistakes that would eventually lead him down a dangerous path full of pitfalls. These failures are an important part of his story and serve as a reminder that even the wisest and most powerful can make mistakes and face painful consequences. Despite God's clear warnings, Solomon gave in to the temptation of love for women from other lands, amassing a harem the size of which is unparalleled in history. The divine warnings Solomon received were not enough to stop him from succumbing to temptation. He amassed a harem that was notoriously large and diverse, containing 700 wives and 300 concubines. These women came from various cultures and nations, and each of them brought with them their own traditions, beliefs, and influences. These women ranged from Ethiopian princesses with skin as black as ebony to the daughters of pharaohs whose eyes reflected the mysteries of the Nile. Each of them was a representation of a unique world, a complex history, and an enigma that Solomon delighted in exploring and understanding. The diversity of his harem reflected the breadth and wealth of his empire, but it also brought with it significant challenges and complications. Each woman, with her own beliefs and traditions, influenced the king and the kingdom in ways that were not always visible at first glance. Every part of the palace reverberated with laughter, whispers, and songs. The palace walls were not only silent witnesses to Solomon's greatness, but also to the vibrant and complex environment that existed within its walls. These women were not mere shadows in his court. They each had their own role and importance in the immense political and cultural mosaic of the kingdom. The palace was a place of continuous interaction and influence, where alliances were formed and broken, and where power was constantly negotiated and redefined. Through these marriage alliances, Solomon built lasting relationships, made peace agreements with distant kingdoms, and deepened his understanding of the peoples and cultures that bordered the borders of his domain. Each marriage and relationship was a piece in a complex puzzle of diplomacy and politics, which required skill and strategy to manage effectively. Solomon used these alliances to strengthen his kingdom and expand his influence. But this intricate network also created fertile ground for intrigue and jealousy. However, this intricate network of relationships also became a breeding ground for intrigue and jealousy. The alliances and relationships Solomon built were complex and often involved rivalries and disputes. Every favor granted by the king had the potential to ignite rivalries that burned silently in the corridors adorned with exotic tapestries and lavish decorations. The palace, with its wealth and splendor, was not only a place of power and glory, but also a battleground for disputes over influence and prestige. The splendor of her court and the diversity of her harem also brought with them shadows and challenges. The presence of so many women from different cultures and beliefs brought a variety of influences and pressures that began to erode the monotheistic faith of the people of Israel. Foreign gods began to infiltrate Jerusalem, accompanied by their priestesses and rituals. The introduction of new gods and religious practices created a tension between the monotheistic tradition and the new influences that were becoming increasingly prevalent. Statues of Asherah and Baal began to appear in the high places, challenging the solid monotheistic faith of the people of Israel. The introduction of these idols and pagan practices was a clear sign that Solomon's devotion to God was weakening. The worship of foreign gods was not only a matter of personal belief, but also a direct challenge to Israel's religious and cultural identity. Solomon, caught in the complex web of his marriage alliances, was moving further and further away from the laws and traditions of his predecessors. The same man who had erected the magnificent temple in Jerusalem to honor the God of Israel was now building altars to Ashtoreth, Milcom, and Molech, the abominable gods of the surrounding nations. This change in worship reflected a growing disconnection between Solomon and the principles that had underpinned his wisdom and success. Idolatry began to take deep root in his heart, clouding his judgment and drawing him away from the divine wisdom that had once distinguished and guided him. Dedication to these foreign gods was not just a matter of personal worship, but also a reflection of a wider change in the spiritual direction of the kingdom. Faced with this, the Lord, when he saw Solomon's wayward heart, was filled with indignation and sorrow. God, who had granted Solomon incomparable wisdom and wealth, saw the transformation of his heart and the growing disobedience to his laws. God's indignation and sorrow were a direct response to Solomon's unfaithfulness, which had departed from the principles and commitments that had characterized his initial reign. He who had been blessed with unparalleled wisdom and wealth was now turning his back on his commandments and indulging in the worship of false gods and idols. The change in Solomon's behavior and his growing disobedience had profound consequences not only for him, but also for the kingdom he ruled. Faithfulness to God and compliance with his commandments were seen as fundamental to the stability and prosperity of the kingdom, and the violation of these principles had significant implications. God, in his righteous anger, confronted Solomon and warned him of the severe consequences of his actions. Because you have done this and have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I commanded you, I will take the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. God's warning sounded in Solomon's ears like a thunderclap. The kingdom he had built with such care and wisdom would be divided up and handed over to others after his death. Disobedience and idolatry had sown the seeds of discord and fragmentation in the once united and prosperous nation under his reign. During his rule, Solomon, the wise and prosperous king, had succumbed to temptation and strayed from the path of righteousness. His example would become an important warning for future generations, a reminder that even the wisest and most powerful are not immune to going astray when they stray from God's precepts and guidelines. Solomon's story, with its victories and failures, offers valuable lessons on the importance of faithfulness and humility before God. As recorded in the book of Proverbs, one of the texts attributed to Solomon, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." This verse encapsulates one of the main lessons of Solomon's life. Even when something seems right or desirable, it can lead to disastrous consequences if it is not aligned with divine principles. Solomon's choices and the path he took are a reminder that it is essential to seek divine guidance and remain faithful to his commandments. The consequences of Solomon's idolatry and disobedience soon became apparent. Enemies and adversaries arose, both from within and outside his kingdom, seeking to take advantage of the king's spiritual weakness to serve their own interests and goals. The instability that resulted from Solomon's disobedience created an environment in which ambitions and rivalries could flourish, leading to a period of conflict and division. Prominent among these adversaries was Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon who had been secretly anointed by the prophet Ahijah to rule over 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. Jeroboam, on receiving the prophecy that the kingdom would be divided, saw an opportunity to claim his own power and influence. The fact that Jeroboam was anointed secretly and that the prophecy was revealed outside Solomon's knowledge reflected the seriousness of the situation and the imminence of change. As it is written, Ahijah said to Jeroboam, "Take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I will break the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give you 10 tribes." This prophecy of the division of the kingdom was a clear announcement of the consequences of Solomon's actions and a sign of the impending change. Jeroboam, aware of his prophetic destiny, rebelled against Solomon and sought the opportunity to take the kingdom for himself. The division of the kingdom and the rise of Jeroboam represent the fulfillment of the divine warning and the beginning of a new chapter in Israel's history. The wisdom and prosperity that had once marked Solomon's reign were now threatened by division and imminent discord. From this moment on, the kingdom of Israel would go through a period of division and instability, and Solomon's legacy would be tested by his successor's ability to restore unity and prosperity. The impact of Solomon's actions and the subsequent division of the kingdom would be felt for generations and would shape Israel's history in profound and lasting ways. However, in a moment of clarity and repentance, Solomon turned his heart to God, recognizing the futility of his idolatry and the vanity of his earthly desires. Solomon's repentance was a reflection of his growing awareness of the faults and mistakes that had marked his reign. In an effort to understand and reflect on the meaning of his life and actions, Solomon channeled his thoughts and reflections into the book of Ecclesiastes, a deeply moving testimony to his search for meaning and purpose in life. The book of Ecclesiastes offers an introspective and philosophical view of human existence. Solomon, with words full of emotion and wisdom, reflected on the ephemeral nature of human existence, offering a profound insight into his own spiritual struggles and discoveries. The book is a meditation on the vanity of earthly conquests and pleasures and the search for a deeper and more lasting purpose. Through Ecclesiastes, Solomon expressed his understanding that all is vanity and that only the search for God and the fulfillment of his commandments offer true meaning and purpose to life. In short, Solomon's life and reign offer a rich tapestry of wisdom, failings, and lessons. His legacy is a mixture of greatness and warnings, a reflection of the complexity of the human experience and the need to remain faithful to divine principles. Solomon's story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of humility, wisdom, and faithfulness to God, and continues to inspire and educate generations about the true path to prosperity and peace. Through his writings, King Solomon revealed his inner battles, his actions, and his ultimate understanding that only God can provide true satisfaction and meaning to life. The book of Ecclesiastes has become a legacy of Solomon's wisdom, serving as a reminder to future generations that seeking happiness in material goods and earthly pleasures is ultimately futile and purposeless. Only by placing God at the center of our lives can we find the peace and purpose we so desperately seek. After a reign of 40 years, Solomon, the wise and prosperous king, breathed his last. When Solomon closed his eyes for the last time, he left a legacy of splendor and wisdom, but also a kingdom on the brink of division. His son Rehoboam ascended the throne, inheriting a kingdom that was already showing signs of fragmentation and conflict. Solomon's death marked the end of an era of splendor and wisdom, unparalleled in Israel's history. However, his legacy would continue through his writings and the lessons his life passed on. Despite his flaws and mistakes, Solomon would always be remembered as a king whose wisdom and wealth impressed the world, and whose final repentance highlighted the importance of keeping God at the center of our lives. However, there is a fascinating detail about Solomon's story that doesn't come from the Bible, but from legends found in apocryphal texts and in the Testament of Solomon. According to these traditions, Solomon was not only a wise king and a magnificent builder, but he also possessed a magical ring, known as Solomon's ring. This ring, supposedly given to him by the archangel Michael, gave him the power to summon, control, and expel demons. Solomon used these powers to force demons to perform tasks or to help build the temple in Jerusalem, among other things. These accounts are full of symbolism and must be understood within their cultural and religious context, reflecting the interest in supernatural abilities and attributing to Solomon capacities that amplify his already legendary wisdom and power. In this way, Solomon's story has become a testimony to the ups and downs of human experience, showing how even the wisest and most powerful can succumb to temptation and sin, but also how God's grace and forgiveness are always available to those who repent and seek His presence. The greatest example of faith and obedience to God is the story of the Apostle Paul, who went from being a persecutor of Christians to one of God's most influential preachers. Click on the video to learn about Paul's incredible journey of faith and redemption, as he faced shipwrecks, imprisonment, and intense debate while writing some of the most profound and impactful letters in the New Testament. Don't miss it.